What's going on, everybody? Mr. Barry here, back at it with these nearpods and videos. We're now in unit number 3 for the class. We're going to be talking about solving quadratics by factoring. So we'll be dealing with, throughout this unit, quadratic still. That's where the focus is at. Our biggest exponent within the problems will be 2. But here we're going to be solving the quadratics. So we have a nice little background. We know about the parabolas, what they should kind of look like. Axis symmetry, vertex, mirroring, things like that. Now we're going to be trying to solve quadratics, specifically since it's solving quadratic equations. We're going to try to combine two different ideas here with solving these quadratic equations and factoring. You've seen a little bit of factoring in Algebra 1 that involved GCF, and there was some factoring quadratic trinomials. That's with 3 terms there. So when we solve these quadratic equations, we're going to try to do it by factoring for the most part here. A couple key ideas to take with you throughout this unit. The first idea is, again, generally speaking, what we're interested in here in this unit is kind of sort of making it go from a look of a standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, quadratic to intercept form. What that would look like is, a lot of the times we're going to see different factors factored out, and it will make life a little bit easier for us to understand what solutions to the equations would be. We'll talk about that more in other videos with examples. A good idea to do with that factoring here is to always check for the GCF first. So we're going to talk about things that you might have talked about back in Algebra 1, might learn some new things as well, of course. But the idea of checking for a GCF, the greatest common factor, is something that you should do first and foremost in every single problem. All right, so if it involves solving a quadratic equation, or if it says factor, always checking for a GCF first to kind of help ourselves out in understanding what it is that the problem wants and how we get the final answer, especially if it's a solving problem and we're trying to find a solution. Finally, another key thing here when it comes to solving quadratic equations is our goal here is to get the equation equal to 0. So we've been dealing a lot with functions and graphs. We're kind of moving away from graphs now and more so the algebraic, calculations that we're going to have to do here. So we're used to y is equal to something, or f of x is equal to something when it comes to having to put an x comma y on a graph. Here what we're going to be doing is dealing with equations, and specifically we want those equations to equal 0. When we do that, we're going to use the zero product property. Now, you might not necessarily completely understand that phrasing right this second, but you've been using it for a very long time with me in this class. We used it back in absolute value functions. We used it in the last unit when we were talking about intercept form here. That's the idea where if I have some sort of parentheses or brackets, I'm trying to figure out what value for the variable would make that specific parentheses or bracket 0. So we use that a bunch to figure out maybe the x value for the vertex or the axis symmetry when we had vertex form. You use that to figure out the x-intercepts when we had a quadratic and intercept form. We've been using that a lot, and hopefully you can make that connection to make this a little bit go easier. Again, that's a situation when we're solving quadratic equations and trying to get what our variables would be equal to. So a lot to talk about in this unit. Again, it's going to take us a month here and run us into the beginning of December. But a lot more calculations, a little less graphs, and a little bit more solving equations, what you would be more familiar with from back in Algebra 1.